Hey, thanks for being in the REC experience. I'm your host, Jas Takhar, with your girl, Laura Elto Stewart. What's going on?
Jas,
How you
what's
doing?
up?
It's good. I mean, I feel really happy the fact that we're not doing this on Zoom right
So
now.
we can have an appropriate amount of distance between us.
I just like having more people in the room as well. I'm very, very happy about bringing this episode to our listeners and our viewers.
Yeah, we've had this one on hold for a while.
Well, I would say a few weeks. Yeah, we've been saving it. Wanted to make sure this gentleman's book was out, Mr. Patrick Bet David. We'll talk about a little bit about the episode, talk a little bit about what's happening in our world here at REC. But before we do that, if you're watching, I need you to do me a favor. Drop us a subscribe, click that button, and as the kids like to say, drop the bell, leave us a comment.
I don't know what any of this
Press the
means.
like button. It helps with the YouTube algorithms.
I just show up.
You just show up. You do a great job at that, but just that. Mr. Patrick Bet David from Valuetainment.
What a fella. I mean, I've done a deep dive on this guy now.
Yeah.
I'm in the midst of reading the book, and I've watched a lot of his YouTube videos, most notably the one with Kobe Bryant.
Oh,
which
yes.
is fabulous. So
Yeah.
if you haven't seen that, do yourself a favor.
After this
Watch that
episode,
video.
make sure to go to his YouTube page, drop him a subscribe and likes on his video as well. Valuetainment is the name of the YouTube page.
Channel,
He actually just came out with a podcast. And sorry, Patrick, I'm not sure if this was like very recent or not, but the Bet David podcast is really cool as well. It has a couple of co-hosts with him, and they just shoot the breeze about everything and anything. But Patrick, I mean, this guy runs one of the largest insurance organizations in the States. He does some business in Canada as well. I did mention to him, I'm not sure if it was on here or off here, I said next time you come to Toronto, because he does do business here, he's going to try his best to do an in-studio podcast.
I would love to meet him in person. His story is fantastic,
It's really
right?
cool.
Like, not from here, refugee, the whole 9 yards, the American dream, really.
It truly is.
Yeah.
I know you said you're almost complete the book.
Yes, I am.
Completed the book.
It's one of the best self-help written books that I've read. And so I'm learning a lot just from writing perspective.
One or two things that stuck with you so far. Again, it's your next 5 moves. I saw another video, and I want to make sure you answer that question for the viewers and listeners. But this guy, it took him 5 years to write this book. He's done some other books as well, and I saw another video that he did. He was talking about his books. The other 2 that he wrote was like done in like 6 months or 8 months. We're in the process of writing a book, and because once we learned that this took 5 years, we said, you know what, we're going to take our time with
let's
ours
relax
as well.
then, because to write a really, really good book,
Timeless,
that will, outlast us. You need to put the time in, and you need the experience. And so I think what we're going through right now this year, with everything with COVID-19, like that was never intended on being in the book, but we've learned so much this year that I think we're going to put a lot of that stuff in our book.
1 or 2 things that have really stuck with you right now, like they're halfway into the book.
One of the things I love, and it's actually early on in the book, he has a mural that you'll see probably in his videos.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
In his office, where he's painted like people who have meant a lot to him, mentored him either from close up or from afar. I guess mostly from afar. And I just think that's such a great thing for people to do. So I myself am in the midst of like painting like my own little piece of art.
Am I on that wall? Am I going to go on that wall?
No, it doesn't have mentors or anything for me, but I'm saying like if there's something
people that you
could
look
have,
up to and stuff.
you're definitely not on.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
You're definitely not on it.
Okay.
But just like a piece of art or a memento, something that you have with you every day, either in your wallet, in your purse, at the office, a picture that reminds you kind of why you're doing it, that in those tough moments you can look to for inspiration.
Awesome. Guys, as always, leave us a comment, give us the feedback, tell us what other guests you want us to go get. I mean, our lineup, and I'm not just saying this, it really, and this is the feedback from you guys, right? If you're watching, or if you're taking your dog for a walk right now, or driving, our lineup is really kick-ass. Like, and obviously we're biased, it's our podcast, but if you look back to see some of the guys and gals that we've had on this podcast, Patrick Bet David was a no-brainer. But let us know who else you want us to bring, and I hope you guys are staying safe. This was one of definitely my favorite episodes, but you tell us how we did.
Enjoy the show.
REC Experience presents Real Estate, Entrepreneurship, Leadership with your host, Jas Takhar. The REC Experience podcast is now on air.
Very excited to have Mr. Patrick Bet-David joining me on the podcast today. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. I got a bunch of copies of your new book here.
Nice.
Okay, there's a few that are missing because we've been obviously giving them away. I'm going to be giving more away, and so I kind of want to jump back and forth, Patrick, about your origin story, and also some tactical stuff that you speak about in the book. Because I like to think that a lot of people not only learn from other people's successes, but also their failures, right? And I know you've hit your head against the wall so many times, and so essentially thank you for that, because it allows someone like myself and my listeners and viewers not to do that. And so I did want to talk a little bit about the book. What kind of inspired you to write a book, man?
What I thought about is one morning I woke up and I had a girlfriend of mine at that time that sent me a text message in the morning saying, "This is not working out anymore. You're working way too hard." That was 6 a.m. I got a message from my mom at the same time that said, "What happened to the old son that would call me all the time?" Simultaneously. This is the first 5 minutes of my day.
Okay.
And then I got an email from my one of my sales guys that left me to another company for a bigger contract. And then I got a call from my number one client that quit, all within 5 minutes. And at that moment, I'm sitting there saying, what do I do next? So I started asking, what would Bobby do? What would Larry do? What would Jackie do? What would Mary do? Because the whole thing is, what is my first move right now when that happens? Do I call the girl? Do I go spend a whole day with her? Do I call my mom? Do I send her a gift? Do I take her to lunch? Do I call the client? Do I call the agent? What do I do? And in that moment, I realized the difference between somebody that wins at the highest level and somebody who doesn't is their sequencing of what they do with their next 5 moves is better than the other person. That's what inspired me to write the book.
I love that. I just did a post on my social medias that's talking about E plus R equals O, the event, and your response to it will equal the outcome. And so I take it you're a big believer of that, because we all get to decide on what the response is going to be to any event. And at the time of this recording, we're obviously some countries and some cities are in like full lockdowns. Here in Toronto, we're in phase 3, which is kind of like a hybrid, I guess it is. How have you navigated through this lockdown, man? I mean, there's people who are losing their jobs, losing their businesses. How has Patrick kind of navigated not only himself, the web in between your 2 ears, as well as your company? Because for anybody who's watching or listening, as I mentioned in the intro with Laura, I mean, this man that we're sitting with runs multi-million dollar business. And so how did you navigate through all this, man?
Yeah, so I was in LA for a board meeting the day they shut down. So it was March 12th or 13th when I was in LA, and NHL shut down, NBA shut down. That's when Donovan Mitchell got the coronavirus from his team, the big center 7'4" guy. Mm-hmm. And then Universal Studios shut down, Disney shut down, everybody shut down. And I'm in LA about to have my board meeting with De La Hoya, with Gabriel Brenner, with all these guys. And all of a sudden, my board team from Greenwich and New York calls me saying, we're not coming to the board meeting. I said, why not? They said coronavirus. I said, you really are that afraid of coronavirus? Yes. This is when it hadn't hit yet where people were worried about it. So I said, okay, so both of you guys are canceling? He said, both of us are canceling. I said, okay. I'm in LA. My plan was to be there for 4 days where I could take my kids to Universal Studios because we love Universal Studios. And then we were going to spend time with the family and then have the board meeting and come back. In that moment, I'm at Beverly Hills Hilton. I tell my wife we're flying back to LA. So the first steps I took was the following. The first thing I did is making sure her mom is good. Mm-hmm. My parents are good. I checked on my dad. I checked on my mom. I said, you guys cannot leave the house. What do you need? Went and checked on them. Mom is good. Then we flew back to Texas. When we flew back to Texas, I brought the family and I took them home. Right after dropping everybody off at home, I came straight to the office. I came to the office and I spent 14 hours studying what the economy has done with former or prior pandemics that we've had, SARS, MERS, Ebola, whatever it is. And I went back and looked at every single thing with the steps of a pandemic, how it affects, what happens, what is the step process, what does the country typically do, how does the economy recover 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later, and here's what I came up with. Out of the last 10 big pandemics that we've had in America last, 40 years, even the world last 40 years, every single one of them, the economy recovered 6 months later. And 90% of them, the economy recovered 12 months later. There's only one of them that the economy didn't recover 12 months later, and that was AIDS. AIDS is the only one. Everything else, the economy recovered. So what does that tell me? That means people are going to panic, market's going to tank, you're going to lose a lot of money for 2-3 months, and then it's going to recover, and then it's going to be fine, and then we're going to be going back to business. So that was the first part. So I said, okay, I'm not selling my stock, my portfolio, nothing. I'm good. It's going to come back up. We're good to go. So that was step number one. Number two, pandemic takes place. How are we going to sell insurance policies? 99% of all of our insurance policies are sold face-to-face. Mm-hmm. I don't sell policies over Zoom. I sit down with you at your kitchen table and I sell you a policy. So I said, okay, we got to figure out a way to see how we can outsell policies through the internet, through the Zoom. So I called every single insurance company I had to see which one of them was going to make that available to me ASAP so I can do it easier. One of them took the lead. The one that took the lead did it faster. They also gave away temporary licenses to people that weren't licensed because all the license centers nationwide were shut down. So the one that gave temporary licenses, they had an edge over everybody else. Why am I sharing this with you? Mm-hmm. Once this carrier NLG worked with me, once I was good with the licensing, once I was good with my sales process, once I was good over here, I held an emergency meeting with all my vice presidents, and we did 3 meetings with vice presidents every week. And every single day I got on, all I wanted them to see from me was, I'm not worried. Everything's all right. They were worried. They didn't do their makeup. Some of them had their heads covered. Some of them wouldn't show their face. Right. Some of them didn't want to get on camera. And I said, guys, I just want you to know what's on your mind. What are you concerned about? And they started talking about it. I said, here's what we have here. This is the part that we don't know about. This is what's going on over here. I don't know what's going to happen over here, but based on this data, it tells us this is what's going to happen. The more and more and more of these Zooms, they saw how calm I was, the calmer they got. And then right afterwards, a couple things happened. We had our biggest 4-month period ever in the top line revenue, in profits, in earnings. We went from selling 3,000 policies in a month last year to 11,000 policies in a month, which is insane to go from 3 to 11,000. We went from 99% of our sales being face-to-face, right, 90% of our sales being through Zoom. And things changed during that period. But the biggest part was immediately coming back and identifying a plan for you, making the right pivots, making the right audibles, and executing. That's what we did.
Well, congratulations on all that success. I mean, one of the main reasons I really wanted to have you on this podcast, Patrick, is to get the word out and your face out. You're a good-looking guy like myself. I always tell people I'm the good-looking Indian guy. And so, but more really, all joking aside, it was because I really resonated with you, your leadership style, your authenticity in the content. For anybody who's watching or listening right now, like, do yourself the favor after this podcast is done, make sure to go follow Patrick on Instagram and Facebook, on everywhere that he is, and this new and the podcast. It's blowing up, and the hundreds of videos that he's done, because you're going to do yourself a favor. You're going to get to learn a lot during that pandemic time that you spoke about. I'm proud to say my team as well. We went from in the first month of the lockdown, like no deals, we sold no homes, helped nobody invest because we were still figuring it out. But in the last 90 to call it 110 days, we've done a little over $1.7 million in commissions, all because a lot of the positivity that you put out there and others are putting out there. And so thank you for putting out so much positivity in the world. You speak about the methodology behind being an effective processor of problems a lot. You speak about it in the book. You also touched on it, like, you even the way that you explained it was phenomenal. I hope the viewers and listeners caught on to it. You made sure your wife was good, her parents were good, your parents were good, and then you came in and spent 14 hours. Like, can you touch on that a little bit more? Like, what goes on in that brain of yours as you're processing problems and situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, the whole thing is on page 80 of Your Next 5 Minutes. On page 80, I created a worksheet. And what I did with this worksheet, I'll just go through it with you.
Yes, please.
I'm 30 years old. At 30 years old, I get sued by a $400 billion company. Okay, I'm starting my insurance company. October 29th of 2009, I get sued by them. And I sit down and I'm looking at my savings. When I'm looking at my savings, I've never started a financial firm before, and I started it in 2009, probably the worst time because the market tanked 38% in 2008. So we're sitting there thinking what we're going to be doing. So throughout this entire process while you're building a business, you're going to have to stay a lot of dragons. You're going to go through a lot of time where you're almost out of business, where odds are against you, where you don't know what to do. You'll be in uncharted territories, but you need a system on how to process issues. If there was one thing I could pass down to my kids, is a system for processing issues, not just solving problems, but processing issues, a system for it. So here's how this works. It's basic, and you can use this with everything. So in this scenario, I was being sued by this $400 billion company. How do you process the issue? Very simple. At the top, you investigate, you solve, you implement. Investigate the level of urgency of how quickly I need to solve this lawsuit. It's a 10. Because if I don't solve this lawsuit, I'm going to go out of business because insurance companies are not going to give me contracts. So it's a 10. Perfect. Urgency is high. Number 2, total impact, potential gain or loss of this lawsuit. I put entire savings. I could lose my entire savings because they have attorneys that are $1,500 an hour. My attorneys are $400 an hour at the time. I can't compete with them.
Right.
Number 3, on the investigate, real cause of issue. Aegon eliminating a competitor. They want to put me out of business. I totally understand what they're doing. I'm not taking it personal. I'm good to go. Then we have to solve who's needed. I need attorneys. I need bankers. I need a crisis management team. So we made a list of who we need. Then it's a list of solutions. I either settle the lawsuit, I countersue, or I win the case. Well, I sat there and I said, if I settle, it'll be easy. I can go back to business. If I countersue, because I got data on them, if I countersue, I could go for 5 years. That'll still put me out of business and run out of money. And if I win the case, so what if I say I won the case, but I lost all my savings? Not worth it. Potential negative effects, insurance carriers terminating my contract, company going out of business. Then what do I need to implement? Whose buy-in is needed? Sales leaders? I need one insurance carrier willing to be patient with me, assign responsibilities. I called my attorney ASAP and said, settle the case. New protocol. I hired a new compliance officer to prevent future potential lawsuits. And I hired 2 law firms. So when you're thinking about this, and you heard when you asked me the question, what did I do when the pandemic happened? I told you I was in LA. What was the risk? First question, what is the risk? What's the level of urgency of the pandemic? Is it a 6? Is it a 5? Or is it a 10? It's a 10. So the moment I know it's a 10, we're flying back to Dallas.
Right.
Go back and we're processing all of it together.
And not to cut you off, Patrick, maybe if it was a 4 or a 5, you might have stayed a couple of extra days. You would have.
Absolutely.
You need 10. Let's get home, honey.
Exactly. The moment we'll have so think about when this becomes a culture. So in your company, you said you have 37 real estate or realtors that work with you.
34 realtors, yeah.
34 realtors that work with you. So imagine in a culture of an office or a family.
Yeah.
So something happens. Oh my gosh, something just took place. Give me the level of the crisis, 0 to 10. It's a 6. Okay, let me finish this meeting. I'll come out.
I fucking love that. That's
that's
the start of it. Yeah, because I picture it. Continue.
That's right. So imagine if you say, John, I'm in a meeting. Is it what level is it? 0 to 10? It's a 4. I'll call you afterwards. Okay, great. It's a 9. Let me step out. What's going on? Right. So that automatically saves you a lot of time. Then right away you're like, it's a 9. What does it mean? We're about to lose how much? Okay, hold an emergency meeting. Jack, reschedule my appointment here. Let's go into the conference room. We go into the conference room. Jack, can you tell Bobby, Larry, Mary, and Cindy to be in the conference room? They come in. All right, what are we looking at here? Boom, 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 boom. Okay, great. And then you go. So when that becomes a culture, now everybody is using that formula on page 80 for every problem. So everybody takes out a sheet of paper and you go through the questions, and that's the worksheet. You print out the worksheet, you take it out, you go through the issues. That's what we do at our offices.
I love the speed of that, right? Because I'm in the process of building this out a lot bigger. Like I said, I mean, I look up to someone like yourself. You inspire so many people, and I'm not just trying to blow smoke up your ass, my man. Like, it's the truth. Like, and it's because of something tactical like that. Because sometimes my day is full of, it's the death of 1,000 you got a minutes, right? And it's like, Jas, you got a minute. But me as the leader, I'm trying my best to keep the culture going, and I'm answering everyone. But it's a simple question like, is that a 4? What is it out of a 10? And if everyone's on the same page, we can get a lot more done. So I really appreciate that. Now, you dedicated this book to your father at the start of the book, and I'm from a place in the north part of Toronto here called Rexdale, which is a rough area. My father came from India in 1974, and my mother factory worker. My mom was taxi driver. My father was. They gave as much as they could give us. I'm very grateful for it. But I was in an area where the teachers told you, Jas, they thought there was something wrong with me because I couldn't sit in class, and I was trying my best, but that's not how I learned. And I learned from books, audiobooks, podcasts now, but seminars. You came from a war-torn country. Your father did, your parents did. And how did that shape you and how you think about business, and how did that upbringing kind of help what you're going through now?
So very good question. I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't go through that crisis. I mean, look, if I look at your eyes have fire in them. I don't know what happened to your upbringing, but your eyes are intense. They have fire in them, and you can tell. It's the biggest thing Iran taught me is a level of paranoia which is needed in business. I think there is not enough paranoia in business. One of the greatest teachers of business is a guy named Andy Grove. If you ever read anything on Andy Grove, almost every single person that you admire today is a byproduct of Andy Grove. Everybody. And I'm talking about Musk. I'm talking about Jobs. I'm talking about Gates, Google, any one of those guys. They will all credit a Hungarian entrepreneur named Andy Grove. He wrote a book in the 80s titled Only the Paranoid Survive. Okay? He wrote a book in the 80s called Only the Paranoid Survive. I'm in the business. If you watch me, if I sit in a restaurant, I like to sit in the corner table near an exit. Why? It's because it's what they teach you in the military. I kind of know that's my exit. I know where everybody is sitting. I know the window. I know if somebody walks in, I pretty much watch who walks in. And I'm monitoring because I have my family there. I'm sitting with a group of people. I'm ready. If I'm in the insurance business, I'm in the anticipation business, which means if God forbid something happens, you have a policy. If you buy auto insurance, you're in the anticipation business. You don't buy auto insurance because you're planning on getting into a car accident tomorrow, but you're in the anticipation business, right? Everything about running a business is about anticipating what could potentially happen, the good, the bad, the ugly. If you're ready for what could happen, the good, the bad, the ugly will not ever surprise you because you'll be prepared for the ugly. So what is an ugly? A major market crash. What is the ugly? A president gets elected like Biden who could raise capital gains taxes to 39.6%. What's the ugly? A Trump could be president where the protesting and a rioting could be up. What's the ugly? But you got to look at it all. When you sit there and you look at the ugly, then you say, I'm prepared for it. So biggest thing I learned about living in Iran is a little bit of paranoia helps in life and in business. Tremendously in the world of business.
And it keeps that fire lit underneath your ass. As you mentioned, it was in my eyes, but it's also underneath my ass, and I know it is you. I have heroes, as I mentioned, yourself included, that I look up to. In some of your podcast videos, you have this mural that's amazing, and I can't remember everyone off the top of my head, but the one that sticks out to me personally all the time is Tupac. That's there because I'm a big listener of his music, grew up listening to his music a lot. You also speak about using heroes to remind yourself of who you want to be. Why is it so important? Because there's someone listening in Iran right now, Patrick. There's someone listening in India, and they can't even imagine getting out of the place that they're in. And I think yourself and myself, we know, we also had people that we looked up to. But why has it been so important for you? You mentioned Andy Grove as well, but talk a little bit about that, man.
It's both inspiration. I think you're talking about that painting right
there. Love it. I got Tupac. I got Abraham Lincoln. We got, and my eyes are a little bad. Is that Aaron? Is that Senna as well?
That's Senna in the back as well.
Love it.
So, one of them is inspiration and the other one is hope. Let me explain to you what I mean by both. So my son comes from school 2.5 years ago. I'm working. My wife says, your son came home today. He's crying.
Yeah.
I said, why is he crying? My son never cries. He's not the cry. He's the guy that says, go ahead and give me the pow, pow. I won't cry. He's like that. He's that guy, okay? So I said, why is he crying? She says, somebody in school called him weird. I said, what? I said, really? He says, yeah, it's okay. I want you to have Melba bring him to the office. So the nanny brings him to the office. And he and I sit over there on the floor, and he's sitting on my legs. And my wife caught it when he was crying, talking to me. She took a picture of it. It's my favorite picture of the two of us ever because there was no attention to the picture. You know how I take professional pictures? This picture's blurry, quality's not good, but it's my favorite picture we ever took.
And you know how you were feeling in that picture, right?
I spoke to him. I said, so what's going on? She says, Dad, today many kids called me weird. I said, what do you mean? She says, they kept telling me, you're so weird. You're so weird. You're different than everybody. You're so weird. You're so weird. And he says, I don't like it. I said, why don't you like it? He says, I don't want to be weird. He says, Dad, am I weird? I said, of course you're weird. He says, so the kids are right? I said, yes. I said, do you know your daddy's the biggest weirdo you'll ever meet? I said, my entire life I was called weird. So he's like, seriously? I said, yeah, of course. I said, I'm okay being weird. The last thing you want to be is normal. You don't want to be normal. He said, so it's okay being weird? I said, of course it's okay being weird. I said, look, how many of them are talking about you? Who's talking about them? You're the weird one. So say, for example, like my son in this week, he has lost 3 of his water bottles when he goes to school.
Okay.
In 1 week, he's misplaced 3 of his water bottles. So he comes up and says, I don't know where I put it. I don't know where I put it. So then Jen will say, babe, this is too many water bottles. I said, babe, Einstein tended to lose everything. He would misplace his keys. He would misplace everything. So what is the benefit of having a hero? If Einstein lost everything and he became who he became, it's okay. Maybe I can as well. If XYZ did what they did and they are who they are today, maybe I'm going to be okay because I have a little bit of tendency of that. I think heroes allow you to forgive some of your mishaps and your mistakes and your flaws and your vices, knowing that long-term you can still be forgiven and you still make an impact. There's a lot of power in having heroes in your life, and I think everybody benefits from it.
Patrick, you sat down with one of my true heroes for a very, very long time. Saw him come up into the league. And I have to say, I've seen so many interviews with him. The one that you did with this gentleman was by far the one that I watch over and over and over again. In fact, when I reference that I'm going to be having you on the podcast, it's the one that I shared the most. It is with the late, great Mr. Kobe Bryant. As I speak to you about him, I'm getting goosebumps because it's somebody that I really followed. And you got an opportunity to spend time with him. And I know how much he meant to you as well. You're a massive Laker fan. Was there something after, or maybe it hit you during the interview that you didn't know about Kobe that struck you like, holy crap, I thought I knew Kobe, but ...
Yeah, I mean, I think it was when we speak offline, when we came in and we were sitting in the office and we were speaking to one another. He comes up to me, says, so you get nervous about doing these interviews? I said, no, not really. And then he said, yeah, me neither. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you played every night for 20 years, so I'm sure you don't get nervous. So when we were going up and about to go up and I saw how he spoke to my kids, he spent a lot of time speaking to my kids as if they were adults. He was just speaking to them. Hey, so tell me, Dylan, what's your name? My name is Kobe. My name is Dylan. Talked to my wife for a good 15 minutes. And he was extremely respectful, extremely amicable, very welcoming, very easygoing. And as we were doing the interview, I'm at the Mirage. I have President Bush and Kobe Bryant here. And I got 7,000 people. I've hired 100 security guards, Secret Services in this place.
Oh, wow.
And while I'm doing the interview, people rush to the front.
Okay.
500 people rush to the front. And they're all doing live. They have their lives.
Yeah.
And in that moment, he felt a little bit uncomfortable. So I had to make sure everybody realized, and I looked at everybody, I said, listen, guys, I can have the security send every one of you guys home, but I don't want to do that. I said, I'm asking you respectfully to step back and go back to your seats. We're going to have the security be at the front here, but we're not going to be doing it this way. And everybody accommodated and they went back to their seats. Kobe liked that. Kobe said, this reminds me of how we were secure at certain places. From that event, when that took place, the tension went very high, very quickly the first 2 minutes. And then all of a sudden he felt more comfortable and safer to open up and talk. And I think that's one of the things that people didn't see because we edited that part in the interview. And we had a great dialogue together, a great conversation together. But I like how he was off camera, how he was with family. One of his old coworkers showed up out of nowhere just to say hi to him. And she's like, man, Kobe, I miss you. How's everything? This 80-year-old woman, it wasn't like a younger woman. Yeah, and they're hugging each other and they're talking. It was as if it was his grandma, the way they were speaking.
Yeah.
You felt the hard side. There's a reason why people's affinity for Kobe is very different than other players. It's very emotional. Kobe fans are very emotional to Kobe. It's different. It's not necessarily like, oh my gosh, he's a human specimen.
No.
He wasn't a human specimen. LeBron's a human specimen. Jordan's a human specimen.
Agreed.
Kobe's very different. Very, very different.
And Patrick, you put that into like from the mind perspective, like his obsessiveness.
Yeah.
Like I find that how obsessed he was is what really like I cling to when I saw that, right? It was like he didn't give a shit what the external noise was. He was able to really drown out all that noise, negative or whatever it may be.
Yeah, he was like I mean, you study. I watch that interview every once in a while. And, the day Kobe died, we were at Seasons 52, a restaurant. And my phone says, Kobe Bryant got into a helicopter accident and he died. And you know how you get the alerts on Apple, and Jen's sitting next to me, my wife's sitting next to me. She's like, we look at each other. What? I thought it was one of those ugly jokes that they played with the Fast and Furious guy. I don't know what the guy's name is.
I forget the guy's name.
Paul
Walker.
Paul Walker, right. When Paul Walker got it, I said, that's an ugly joke to play. And then I got people calling me. And then they verified it. And then it was 100% verified. Dylan, my 6-year-old, looks at me and he says,
oh, God.
Daddy, Kobe, my friend, just died?
No.
I said, yeah, buddy. My 6-year-old he says, that's my best friend, Daddy.
Holy
Kobe's
crap.
my friend. So that tells you a lot about Kobe on how he was, where he won people over, and he had a unique way about himself. And he's one of a kind. He will forever be remembered. Look, the world stopped when he died. A lot of athletes have died.
100%.
And we've all respected him and given him that. The world's given it to him. But when Kobe died, the world stopped. Everybody stopped around the world when Kobe died.
Yeah, he definitely touched a lot of people. I had a hard time just even watching any videos with him afterwards because it was hard for me to process because he was a massive mentor to me from afar, obviously. And I was actually hurt by the fact that the world wasn't going to be able to see his uniqueness even more, like post basketball with all the content and so on and so forth. And coming back to you for a sec, Patrick, like what got you into creating so much content? Like you obviously are you're such a natural at it. What has it done for your business? Because I got a lot of entrepreneurs who are not speaking to the world right now. And my message to them is like, get out there, let the world hear you, see you, read you. You don't have to do videos if you're not comfortable. Like do a podcast if you're comfortable with your voice. If you're not good at reading if you're not good at video or audio, then maybe write or draw. What has it done for you producing so much content?
It's multidimensional. One way is on creating content. What would you and I give to watch content created by our grandfather?
Oh, God,
I never had a chance to spend time with my granddad, my dad's dad. I don't know who he is, but I'm reminded of him all the time. And I don't know who my great-grandpa is. Well, if you had your great-grandpa's content, how much of it would you watch? You'd probably watch all of it. So
how about my father's? I can't remember my father's voice in a young voice. You know what I mean?
Think about that. So what I'm trying to say is with the content part, one of them is you have to think about your kids. Every kid wants to have access to their parents when they were younger and going through different times in their lives. I think the biggest thing for me of creating content is the kids are going to be able to see this content for decades and decades and decades to come. And so will the grandkids and the great-grandkids. That's one of the biggest ones for me because that's more legacy. That's what drives me. As far as the business part goes, it's very simple. I think on the business part it's a form of a resume. So say, for instance, you and I don't know each other. We sit down and we start to do business together. And then on our first meeting, we have a good meeting. You go to the second meeting. Before we get into the second meeting, you talk to somebody else and they say bad things about me. So now we can't talk to each other. You kind of like, I'm good. I'm not interested anymore for whatever reason. Well, this time around, If you and I have a first meeting together, you can go watch 15 videos of me and say, listen, I like this guy's style. He's my kind of a guy. Then no matter what anybody says, you're already comfortable knowing how it's going to be doing business with me because you like my style. So then we'll do business together because you're checking my resume online, and that resume could be some of the content that's created. What it did do for my business, last night I'm walking a dog in my community. I'm walking my boy after we did a bike ride, and we're going for a walk. And one of the neighbors, you know, he says, oh my gosh, hey, Pat, I just bought your book. I support this. I'm like, hey, great. And then, you know, yesterday I'm looking at a school that I want to send my kids to. It's a very elite private school. And the person that was giving us a tour of the school, she had no idea who she was talking to because my wife booked the appointment. Middle of the appointment, she stops. She has this one weird moment. She's like, oh my gosh, you're Patrick Bet David. I follow all your content. Me and my husband watch you. Da, 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 da. So it allowed me to get into doors that I couldn't get in before. But, you know, sometimes you also have to realize that creating content is not about winging it. A lot of people think you can just go out there and wing it and it's going to give you all those benefits. It cannot. You have to respect the audience. You have to realize that the audience is busy. You have to realize that the audience is not going to waste time listening to anybody. So you have to be very sincere, honest, respectful of the audience, and respectful of your identity, what you stand for, and then go out there and talk about it. I was having a lunch with a guy today who's one of the biggest influencers out there. All the big influencers in Hollywood, he got them all their deals. All the big deals, this guy got them. So we're having lunch together, and we're talking about Logan Paul.
Okay.
I said, you know what I like about Logan Paul? I mean, Logan Paul comes here and there, you see some of his stuff. I said, Logan Paul has legs. He says, what do you mean? I said, this is a guy that could one day run for office. He says, Logan Paul run for office? I said, oh yeah, why is that? I said, he's attractive, he's foolish, makes mistakes, he's young, he's confident, but he's authentic. And he is who he is. He's not acting on camera, right? And sometimes people if you have to be a different personality on camera to win the audience over, the audience is eventually going to know who you are, and then you're going to lose them. So there's an element of the audience also finding out who you really are that's not an act. Once they figure that part out, then they say, there's something different about her. There's something different about his writing. There's something different about their videos. There's something different about the approach he takes. I like his angles. I like his opinion. Now you create a loyal following. So if you do that, there's a lot of benefits to creating content.
I love that. I want to be respectful of your time. I also want to be respectful. Okay, awesome. I want to be respectful also of my audience, who are a lot of real estate investors, Patrick. And so in your book, like a lot of your chapter, like the actual headings are master knowing yourself, master the ability to reason. I talk to my real estate investors all the time that majority of this is a mindset thing. What can some of my investors, my real estate investors, take from your book?
Oh, this is specifically for guys that are investors, because if you are an investor, exactly what I just covered with you, it has to do with processing issues on which area to invest in, which area not to. You need a formula for it, right? You'll notice a lot of real estate investors fail. Right. Many people are former real estate investors, if you know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of former real estate investors because, you know, they don't necessarily know how to come up with the formula on feeling good about a certain property, whether to do it or not. Look, there's 5 moves you got to make. Master knowing yourself, master the ability to reason, building the right team, strategy to scale, and power plays. Every one of these things has to do with real estate investors. Power plays is all real estate investors. Learning how to scale is all real estate investors. All of it has to do with what real estate investors do in their world, because risk is big. You need the team if you're going to do rehab. You need the team to do the mortgage financing. If you're going to do it, you need the right team to get the appraisal. You need the right team to go find the right areas for you. You need the right team if you're going to build on top of it. If you're going to tear it down and build it back up, you need the right team to be able to get the construction to be done in the next 6 months instead of 12 months from now. Half the time, if you don't have the right team, like in Florida, I'm looking at a property. If I buy this Florida property, you know, they'll say, today, you don't have construction teams for 2 years. Everyone's booked. But if you know the right people, you can get them to do in the next 3 months. Well, that's part of having the right team. You're going to spend the same amount of money, but you have the right team. So everything here is about how to put a killer team together, learn how to scale your formula, come up with the processing issues, method that works for you. And then at the end of the day, if you start becoming too competitive in a marketplace, you're going to create enemies, and you have to know how to deal with your enemies. If you don't know how to deal with your enemies, they're going to put you out of business.
100%. Patrick, you've dropped so many bombs on this episode, my man. I really appreciate it. Can you leave my listeners and my viewers with one tip, one strategy that they can take advantage of right away and make use of right away?
I would tell you guys this. Here's what I would tell you. Thank you. What I would tell you is the following. No matter what you hear, any content you hear from anybody, your number one thing that worked for me is figuring out a way to be aligned. Here's what I mean by alignment. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has different motives. Everyone has different dreams, goals that they want to go after. But so many times you can you consume so much content that it's almost like watching a movie. You watch Rocky, you want to be Rocky. You watch this, you want to be this. You watch that, you want to be this. So eventually you have to figure out a way to come up with a philosophy that works for you, and then you can't change it too often. You change it too often, you lose momentum. Alignment to me is number one. What are your values and principles, and how aligned is it with the way you live? If your values and principles are aligned with the way you live, you're going to live a very happy life and you're going to grow fast. If your values and principles don't match with the way you live, that's when bitterness comes. And when bitterness comes, most people who are bitter, they don't advance in life. So my biggest suggestion to everybody is figure out a way to get aligned with your values and principles on the way you live. Watch momentum take place in your life.
Patrick, thank you so much for everything you do and taking time to be on this podcast. I really appreciate you, my man.
You got it, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
This has been the REC Experience Podcast with Jas Takhar, an REC Canada production.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching and listening. Please take a second right now to subscribe and follow us on whatever podcast platform you're watching or listening. It means the world to me. Thank you.